The fluorescent lights of the conference room reflected off the glass table, creating an almost surgical glare that belied what was about to happen. I sat amidst the stark white walls, surrounded by familiar faces, yet in that moment, they all felt alien. My name is Clara. I'm 32, and I'm a project manager at a multinational tech company. My mind raced, analyzing every detail, every expression. It was a meeting to discuss the development of new software, but the last thing I expected was a vicious attack hidden between the lines of a presentation. I waited for everyone to settle, the usual air of anticipation hanging heavy. In fact, I was certain this day would mark another step towards my future. A promotion was imminent, based on my hard work and innovative vision. However, a shadow, a betrayal I never anticipated, hung in the air, coming from an unexpected source. Looking at my sister, Laura, I braced myself for what might be another challenge to overcome. She began to speak nervously, her voice slightly trembling. The insecurity I'd always sensed in her seemed to shatter her usual composure. When she accidentally mentioned my pregnancy, a heavy silence fell over the room. Disbelief hung like a cold shroud among my colleagues. The congratulations that usually sparked empathy and joy now felt like a weakness, a vulnerability to be exploited. My heart pounded, and I felt the pressure building behind my eyes. Motherhood wouldn't be seen as a blessing, but as something that would potentially make me less competitive. The tension on my colleagues' faces betrayed the poison that had just been injected into our ambition-filled atmosphere. A surge of adrenaline mixed with cold calculation washed over me. The plan had just crumbled, and I knew I needed to be quick and clever. I knew I could always rely on my resilience and crisis management skills. This betrayal, though devastating, was just another obstacle to be strategically overcome. I carefully observed the reactions around me. While some eyes darted to the floor and others showed pity, I caught a small gesture of support from a colleague, Jessica. That was a brief respite in the storm. She knew the pressure I faced. The silence was broken by whispers, a murmuring wave of comments that did little to ease my indignation. I heard a few muted congratulations, but the message was clear. The vulnerability associated with motherhood was all that could be seen. Weighing the loss of the healthy respect I'd cultivated in the office, I realized I was facing a minefield. I couldn't retreat. That would mean losing on all fronts. The plan I'd worked on diligently for months, where credibility and leadership would become assets to my image, left my heart pounding with agony and rage. In an instant, I became not only the pregnant woman, but also the target of suspicion, in a presentation that should have been mine. Laura's betrayal was more than a setback. It was an explicit warning of what she might do to destabilize me. Those excruciatingly painful words, "You can't possibly think you'll get promoted while pregnant," echoed in my mind like an unbearable mantra. Deep down, a growing certainty emerged. I wouldn't let this defeat me. I felt that motherhood wasn't a burden or a weakness. It was a transformation. I took a deep breath, seeking calm amidst the storm raging in my mind. Here was an opportunity to turn the tables. What Laura didn't understand, and even better, what my company hadn't yet realized, was that the strength motherhood would bring would be my fuel. Instead of seeing myself as a failure, I would elevate myself to a higher level. Before leaving that room, I had already begun outlining a plan, a strategy that would not only protect my future, but also transform my image into something more powerful and inspiring. The path would be arduous, but the victory wouldn't just be over her. I would make my journey a way to inspire other women who, like me, struggle to overcome insurmountable challenges. The meeting ended, but my desire for retribution did not. The game had only just begun, and Laura little knew I was devising a plan that would make her rethink her betrayal. Motherhood wasn't my weakness. It was the strength I needed to transform it into my greatest victory. The soft morning sunlight filtered through the windows of my apartment, a spectacle that usually filled me with joy. But today, that joy was a distant shadow, heavy like a storm cloud. As I got ready for work, memories of my life with Laura played through my mind like a slow-motion film, revisiting moments marked by laughter and secrets, now tainted by betrayal. Our relationship has always been complex, marked by a mixture of unconditional love and underlying rivalry. Since childhood, we were often told the old story about two sisters being two halves of a whole, equal and complementary. However, the truth is that we became more like adversaries on a battlefield, where the weapons were subtly calculated words and gestures. I remember one day in the park, with colorful ice creams in our hands. My smile was wide, but Laura masked an insecurity I didn't realize. "You're the star, Clara, and I'm just the shadow," she'd say amidst laughter. But there was a fragility in her tone that was hard to ignore. As time went on, these small cracks turned into a chasm. The insecurity started to show in every interaction. During our college years, when I received a scholarship after winning a competition, a simple smile from me was enough for Laura to ask, "What about my future?" The rivalry between us had formed as if we were dividing an inheritance instead of being sisters. And now, in the workplace, the little venomous jabs had become hostile, creating a minefield between us. Over time, I realized her admiration was intertwined with an unsettling streak of rivalry. The messages underlying our interactions became more frequent and harsh, as if Laura eagerly awaited the opportunity to bring me down. Her voice echoed in my mind. "You can't think you'll get promoted while pregnant." The almost macabre words resonated, making me feel a mixture of pain and anger. How could she be so cruel? Those messages, which initially didn't deeply affect me, were now entrenched in every environment I entered. Remembering another conversation, painful and unsubtle, she once confessed, "You'll always get everything while I'm just the sister left behind." At that moment, the object of her anguish was me. As she vented, I felt like a vulnerable public figure exposed. Her lamentations revealed the truth we hid under the guise of cordiality. On the other hand, on a cloudy day, Laura had pushed me to accept her help on a joint project. That day, we joined forces, and I thrilled at the idea that there was, finally, a sincere connection. However, the results of our work showed that Laura's true intention wasn't to build, but to control. My growing ambition at work became increasingly threatening to her. These feelings of insecurity pushed her to betrayal, culminating in the fateful meeting where the pregnancy was revealed as a low blow. The truth is, it was in my way. And, without realizing it, Laura helped draw the line between what would be a dark and impulsive moment of fate. The day after the revelation, while trying to focus on the presentation, thoughts about our tumultuous relationship intertwined with my imagination. The encounter where Laura had drawn attention to my vulnerability felt like a thorn in a fresh wound. The issue wasn't just about my pregnancy status. It was about how my life was about to be rewritten in the shadows of our rivalry. I needed to inject the respect she seemed to want to snatch from me. Childhood flashbacks surfaced as I walked, and my lungs gasped for air, as if the air became dense and difficult to breathe. I remembered the joyful moments we shared. Secrets and laughter had become our talismans, but now seemed as distant as a forgotten dream. "Fight your insecurities, Clara," I repeated to myself. What I finally understood was that every wound could transform into armor. My professional life demanded a transformation, and that meant I had to stand firm. That afternoon, entering the company, I shone under the pressure medicated by emotion. I was enveloped in a cloud of anxiety, but my brain, trained to solve crises, told me I couldn't hesitate. I met with the team to discuss the next steps. The long, cold conference table became the battlefield where I would become not just a survivor, but also a force to be reckoned with. Observing the looks of respect and recognition from some colleagues, I ignited within myself the desire to transform. Ignoring voices and observations, I held on tight, taking a deep breath. I really needed to buy time in this silent battle. Raising my voice, I had the courage to react. I expressed my ideas about innovations we could incorporate, but inside me, the constant memory of Laura moved like marble, waiting for the right moment to counterbalance. Seeing the looks of distrust turn towards me, a determination took hold. I wouldn't let Laura, or any other negative influence, determine my destiny. In the silence of that room, I decided I would prepare a presentation that would not only dispel doubt, but also expose my innate ability to lead and transform difficult situations into opportunities. This pregnancy wouldn't be seen as a weakness. It was another tool I would use to redefine my image. The night before the presentation, thoughts of interactions with Laura loomed, returning to those childhood conversations and revealing that rivalry which, paradoxically, made me want to fight even harder. As uncertainties swirled in my mind, a flash of wisdom decided to manifest as strength. The relationship that was once my rivalry would become the force I would use in favor of my success. A transformation awaited me. So, with a heart hungry for courage and a resilient spirit, I prepared for the battle ahead. Somehow motherhood, with all its vulnerability, would become my armor. It wasn't just about retribution, but a deep desire to prove I am capable, that my trajectory is defined by no one but myself. Laura didn't know it, but real change was imminent, both within me and between us. I would make it worthwhile, not only for myself, but for the many women who feel defeated simply for being pregnant. And this journey had barely begun. Presentation day arrived, and as I entered the conference room, I felt an electrifying mix of nerves and empowerment. The table was lined with my colleagues, faces anxious, and to my surprise, a few supportive glances. Everyone had their tablets and notes ready, but I knew what I really needed was a direct connection with them, something that transcended the cloud of doubt surrounding my condition. Good morning, everyone. Today, I'm eager to share with you not only an update on our goals, but an overview of what we can achieve together, even when facing unexpected challenges. The words left my mouth with clear purpose. I couldn't let myself be intimidated. As I spoke, I observed my colleagues' faces. Some offered encouraging smiles, but others seemed distracted, as if weighing what the pregnancy meant for my leadership capabilities. The focus was on me, and I needed to redirect it to what truly mattered: our project. After a careful introduction, I began to present the ideas I had pondered during sleepless nights. With growing confidence, I mentioned the technological innovations we could implement to optimize our workflow. The future of our team depends on our ability to adapt and innovate, regardless of the circumstances surrounding us. Each word seemed to lift a weight from my shoulders, and as I detailed each part of the project, a beam of light began to form amidst the gloom Laura and her words had created. At that precise moment, I realized that competitiveness could be a lever. As I spoke, Laura's face became a mask of displeasure. Noticing this, an even stronger determination took hold of me. So, I paused briefly and looked directly at her, preparing to counter her without resorting to the words commonly used in rivalries. Laura, if you have any considerations or suggestions regarding the proposal, feel free to share. Your expertise in this area would be immensely valuable. That small gesture of inclusion stunned her. The tension in the room was palpable. Colleagues exchanged surprised and amused glances. In that moment, I not only reaffirmed my position, but showed that, despite our differences, I could be an inclusive leader. After a flicker of hesitation, Laura recovered and began to offer some criticisms of my project. However, Clara, do you truly believe you can maintain the team's effectiveness while dealing with a pregnancy? The venom in her voice was almost undeniable. I felt that if I didn't act quickly, the negative narrative could solidify. I took a deep breath, remembering the rites and practices I had studied. Laura, my pregnancy is indeed an aspect of my life that I'm navigating. However, this doesn't mean I won't be able to contribute significantly and impactfully to our team and project. Motherhood isn't a barrier. It motivates me to create a legacy. The murmurs in the room began, not of disapproval, but of affirmation. I realized that vulnerability could be a powerful tool, and demonstrating that I wouldn't let Laura dictate my destiny was beginning to shape a new narrative around me. After the meeting, I sought out Jessica, the colleague who had been supportive from the start. I was thinking of presenting the project idea to upper management. I thought it could bring a fresh perspective to what we've been developing so far. What do you think? She smiled enthusiastically. Clara, that's perfect. Your project has so much potential, and upper management needs to see it. Let's review the data, fill in the gaps, and rock it. As we planned our approach, I realized she would also help me formulate a speech that expressed what I truly felt, but in an intelligent way, a union of emotion and rationality. While Jessica and I worked, I decided to take a step further in my preparation. I began to investigate more about pregnant employees' rights at my company, scouring internal manuals and reports summarizing inclusion policies. I knew I had to combine technical knowledge with a personal touch, an appeal that would not only spark empathy, but also show that the inclusion of pregnant employees could add real value to the corporate environment. Listening to case studies of other women who had overcome adversity, I discovered that many of them had become inspirational leaders, proving that motherhood doesn't oppose commitment. I contacted a colleague in HR who always seemed approachable. When I explained my situation, she was open and helpful. Clara, statistics show that pregnant women bring new perspectives and resilience to the team. If you go to the meeting with data and concrete examples, it will have a much greater impact, she said, boosting my confidence. Together, we reviewed the equality and inclusion policies, and I compiled a series of data and stories that could further strengthen my argument. From that conversation, new ideas emerged that could transform what previously seemed like just a struggle into a true manifesto. I was shaping a narrative that wouldn't be just mine, but that of all the women who had been underestimated and disappointed by a lack of recognition. What began as a survival strategy had transformed into a call to action. As time went on, I realized my journey wasn't just about me and motherhood. It was an opportunity to educate and inspire, challenging corporate culture to embrace the strength that arises from adversity. What was once an obstacle had become a lever for a better future. With newfound determination burning within me, I began preparing for the meeting with senior management. I gathered all the data, the stories, and a new proposal that aimed not only at my future, but also at the future of so many women walking the same path. The fight was just beginning, but I was armed with knowledge and a strengthened purpose. On the eve of that decisive meeting, my heart pounded with each beat, increasingly aware that the biggest transformation was about to happen. The morning of the decisive meeting arrived, and my anxiety transformed into an electric energy, pulsing through my veins. I felt strong as I looked at myself in the mirror. The dress I chose wasn't just to impress. It carried the symbolism of a struggle fought to be seen and heard, of a woman on the verge of transformation. As I walked down the hallways, the aroma of fresh coffee mingled with the intense expectation that permeated the air. Today wasn't just another day at the office. It was an inflection point. The meeting room was filled with familiar faces, but today, they all seemed different. Mark, my boss from Human Resources, sat at the head of the table. He had always been a mentor I admired, but his demeanor today was an unknown. I needed his support, but I also feared his traditional views might weigh heavily on his responses. I found my place at the table, swallowing hard as I mentally prepared for what was to come. A wave of nervousness washed over me, but I took a deep breath, reminding myself that this fight was bigger than myself. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'm excited to share my vision for a project that can impact not only the company's bottom line, but also the culture we want to cultivate. I began, my voice echoing in the room. During the presentation, I used each carefully compiled data point, each inspiring story that captured the value of motherhood. The screens displayed performance graphs of pregnant women compared to their non-pregnant peers. Each title, each number, was a fish I cast into a sea of distractions. Research shows that the presence of pregnant women can increase team creativity and resilience. We need to adapt to that, I emphasized, watching the reactions of those around me. In those moments, I could see expressions change on the directors' faces. Mark, sitting directly in front of me, seemed attentive. He listened to every word with genuine interest, I could tell, and for the first time, I felt the power was back in my hands. But there was still the shadow of Laura, who would, as always, try to reverse the narrative. Seeing that my presentation was resonating with them, I knew it was my duty to keep this momentum going. When I finished my proposal, the silence in the room was palpable. The tension increased, and for a few moments, time seemed to stand still. Clara, It's clear you've prepared extensively for this, but I'd like to hear Laura's opinion on your proposal, Mark declared, signaling that a democratic conversation should ensue. Laura, with her sharp gaze, quickly spoke up. You've presented a lot of data, Clara, but we must consider that not every pregnancy is a smooth journey. This can create challenges for the team. Pregnant women may become distracted, and concern for the health of the mother and baby can clearly alter work dynamics. I saw her mouth move, but the message she was trying to convey now seemed like just words thrown into the air that was once light and optimistic. My heart pounded. It wasn't just my honor at stake. It was the fight of so many women who couldn't defend themselves. I didn't waste time responding. Laura, I understand your concern. Pregnancy, like any other challenge, presents issues to be addressed. However, my proposal focuses precisely on equipping women with the tools to perform their duties productively and thus help promote innovation within our team. This is an inclusive space, and it's our responsibility to train the company to support each of its members. Mark nodded, and I sat up straighter, reinforcing my response. His gaze changed, demonstrating observation and reflection. The energy in the room began to shift. Laura, realizing the effectiveness of the exchange, was still determined not to lose the battle. But what you're proposing is only temporary support, Clara. We need real solutions that deliver tangible results for the team, not just words. Her aggressive tone triggered a wave of murmurs among those present. Laura, we have to consider that this change happens on multiple levels, and it starts with the inclusion of all points of view, the collaboration of everyone involved. We need a space where everyone can feel safe and productive. The goal is to transform our work environments for the better, I replied, feeling that I was slowly beginning to win over allies. The discussion continued. Mark encouraged a free exchange of ideas among the directors, and each began to engage with opinions and suggestions. Sadly, Laura seemed defensive. Her tone of voice and facial expression became tense. Gradually, I realized the conversation had evolved into a constructive dialogue. This gave me hope that they were beginning to see motherhood in a new light. After the meeting, a new energy began to emanate around me. The feedback was encouraging, and the conversations that arose transcended mere pleasantries. They were meaningful dialogues. Future meetings had gained a new purpose, and ideas blossomed with renewed determination. The seeds I had planted were now being cultivated by more people all around, and it wasn't just a minefield we were beginning to traverse, but a flourishing field with the potential for growth. Jessica, who had been by my side throughout this journey, approached me in the hallway after the meeting, and, amidst nervous laughter, said, "Incredible, Clara. You did it. The inclusive approach is what we need. I'm so excited to see what we can do together." Her support was a confirmation. It was more than just having someone. Together, we could create a much larger impact. It wasn't long before the executive board began generating initiatives and projects related to what I had presented, and I was absolutely surprised to receive the official invitation to lead a committee dedicated to motherhood and inclusion in our workplace. When I saw the proposal, tears welled up, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude. It was more than I had ever imagined. I was forging a path that signified not just compassion for what was once seen as a weakness. With the support of a diverse group of women and men who believed in inclusion, that committee would begin to shape a new future in our company. It was no longer just a dream, but a reality rapidly approaching. This not only transformed the way I viewed motherhood, but also how my company could view the future. It was a renewed journey, where I would not only find a voice, but also become a pillar within this new environment. Laura was still there, and even though there was tension between us, something needed to change. Throughout that month, I realized it was time to meet with her, to have a frank conversation where we could diffuse tensions and build a better relationship. Motherhood now would no longer represent a fight, but would become a point of unity. And who knows, together we could inspire other women to rise up, challenging the difficulties. The battle was far from over, but we were, together, under a new light. Amidst this transformation, I realized not only my own recovery, but the chance to transform my relationship and the future of so many women who felt invisible. We all deserved a space. and I knew now was the time to fight for it. For all of us. The battle unfolded in new directions, and each new day brought with it the hope of a future full of possibilities. As if it were an invisible current uniting us all. The idea that motherhood could be a transformative force resonated in each of our hearts. Our first initiatives began to take shape quickly. We planned educational workshops on pregnancy and mental health, as well as organized support groups for pregnant women within the company. We wanted to create a space where each could share their concerns and experiences. These interactions became true vessels of empathy, bringing to light stories of struggle, resilience, and overcoming adversity. Each account resonated with me, reminding me of my own journey as I faced the challenges motherhood brought. Laura quickly became a valuable ally on the committee. Her perspective proved essential as we built a more welcoming environment together. Whenever we met to discuss new ideas, there was a growing synergy between us. She was no longer just a rival. We were now partners, united by a cause that transcended our individualities. Once in a meeting, Laura brought up an innovative idea. What if we organized a motherhood and career event where we invited leading women to share their stories? This could show all employees that motherhood is not an end, but a new beginning. The enthusiasm in her voice touched me deeply. That idea wasn't just a plan, it was a symbol of the change we were promoting. We combined our energies and began to develop what would be an impactful event. Our proposal emerged like a flower in the desert. Over the following weeks, I was surprised to notice how this new phase brought me a renewed sense of purpose. There was something healing about teamwork and striving for a better future. As more women joined us, the committee became a vibrant network of solidarity. While we worked fervently, a message popped up on my cell phone screen. Interview with local media about the Motherhood and Inclusion Initiative. Note the date. My heart raced. As I prepared for the interview, the perception of the positive impact we could create in the company culture became even clearer. It was a chance to expose not only our struggle, but also the shared experiences of so many women who, like me, had to deal with prejudice and lack of support. The interview took place in a small but energetic studio. The reporter, an attractive and good-humored man, seemed genuinely interested in hearing our story. "Clara, what motivated you to create this committee?" he asked, as the camera focused on my face. I took a deep breath and, full of emotion, began to speak. Seeing the women around me fighting for a place while dealing with motherhood deeply touched me. These challenges shouldn't be seen as barriers, but as opportunities for transformation. The camera light captured the sincerity in my words. I felt I was giving life to something much bigger than just myself. The journalist asked me questions that allowed me to talk not only about my story, but also about the importance of cultural change in companies regarding motherhood. With each answer, the weight I had been carrying dissipated, transforming into hope. By the end of the interview, the adrenaline and emotion were palpable. I knew that, regardless of the outcome, I was planting seeds of change. In the following days, the repercussions were remarkable. Women began to speak out on social media, commenting on the importance of initiatives like ours. The visibility brought a new wave of support, and the event we were organizing became a landmark in the company. Expectation within the company increased, and the culture of inclusion began to take root in daily conversations. It was contagious. However, resistance still existed. A small group of older managers questioned the need for a program they considered distracting. In a subsequent meeting, one of them raised his voice, arguing that a focus on motherhood could compromise team efficiency. The tension in the room was palpable, and my stomach churned. But it wasn't time to back down. If motherhood is treated as a burden, then we are dismissing a force that can contribute immensely to our corporate culture, I countered, seeking reason in each of those present. This theme was intrinsically linked to a more inclusive future that would benefit all of us, regardless of gender. We need to embrace diversity as an asset, not avoid it as a weakness, and I'm willing to take that risk. Several eyes turned to Mark. He raised his hand and said, "Clara's point is valid. Change doesn't happen with just one step, but a series of actions. If we don't invest in inclusion now, we will suffer losses in the future." The echo of his words brought a sense of relief and a little hope to the room. The following meetings were the most productive I had ever participated in. We managed to reverse negative opinions into support and commitment. With each conversation, narratives shifted, and our efforts began to be seen not as a distraction, but as a necessary step towards a more solid future. Finally, the day of the motherhood and career event arrived. The auditorium was packed, full of enthusiastic women and men, all there to listen and learn. When I went on stage, a familiar nervousness took hold of me, but it was a familiar chill. The warmth and energy I felt were exhilarating. Laura was by my side, and we smiled at each other, aware that our battles had only strengthened and united us. The talks began with stories from inspiring women, whose experiences showed us that motherhood is a part of life that can enrich a career, not hinder it. The responses and comments we received were meaningful. Women told us about their own struggles and victories, and there was a collective feeling of empowerment in the air. At the end of the event, as people dispersed, I felt a pulsating joy within me. That journey that began as a fight for inclusion had become a movement that was contagious to everyone around us. The event received media coverage, resulting in an explosion of support and recognition for what we were doing. Gradually, I realized that each step taken was not only a step forward in my own story, but a path for all women who had been victims of discrimination. The resistance to inclusion dissolved in the warmth of solidarity, and many began to join the committee, expanding our reach and impact. And in our meetings, we frequently discussed new ideas on how to continue promoting an inclusive culture. Planning an extension of the support program for mothers, with the addition of specific spaces for childcare and spaces for reflection for new mothers, became a priority. What I realized at that moment is that the battle for the inclusion of motherhood in the workplace was transforming into a broader movement. And as I looked at the room full of enthusiastic faces, a feeling of gratitude washed over me. We were not just a committee. We were a powerful current in motion, transforming the culture of a workplace that had always been a part of our lives. Motherhood not only united us, it fortified us. I allowed myself to smile, and, surrounded by new companions and colleagues, I knew that a new chapter was opening. The real battle was only just beginning, but I had faith that we were putting our efforts into a legacy that would live far beyond our personal experiences. Together, we would fight for a future where motherhood would be celebrated and respected by all. The exchange of rivalry for unity had become the banner of our movement, and little did I know that this path would lead to a deeper change, not only for our company but for corporate culture as a whole. The months following the implementation of the new initiatives in the maternity committee were like an intense collective dance, each step representing progress toward inclusion. Meetings became true synergy hubs, where ideas blossomed and grew in fertile ground of mutual respect and determination. Each member felt pride in contributing, and the positive spirit quickly spread throughout the company. The structured mentorship program became a landmark. Experienced mothers in leadership positions became mentors to pregnant employees or those planning to become pregnant. We organized a series of meetings where these women shared their experiences and challenges, offering support and strategies that had helped them balance their personal and professional lives. To my delight, each account carried a mix of vulnerability and strength, reaffirming female resilience. The first workshop was a success. The auditorium was packed with people, both women and men, eager to listen and learn from their colleagues' testimonies. "We are stronger together," emphasized one of the speakers as she recounted her struggles. And motherhood shouldn't be seen as an obstacle or a setback, but as a force that brings diversity and innovation to the workplace. She looked into the eyes of each participant, and I could feel the auditorium's energy vibrate with the same truth I had felt at the beginning of this journey. With each workshop we held, the topics expanded. We examined not only the experience of motherhood, but also addressed women's mental health, how to balance work life, and the emotional challenges that arise during this phase. It was as if each conversation became another thread in the tapestry we were weaving. The stories of struggle resonated, transforming the room into a collective spirit where younger women felt empowered by the support of older ones. One day, after one of these sessions, Anna, one of the participants, came to me with a sparkle in her eyes. "Clara, do you feel it?" this energy? We need to do more. How about an event where we can invite leaders from other companies and have them talk about their experiences too? The moment she said that, I realized there was already a greater clamor for change. With the support of Laura and other colleagues, we decided to organize an even bigger conference, the Motherhood and Career Forum. Our expectations were high, but adrenaline and excitement fueled our hearts as we planned every detail of the event. To ensure our message reached a wide audience, we invited renowned executives and entrepreneurs who had explored the impact of inclusion in their organizations. Promoting the event on social media quickly became a success, and women from different sectors signed up. The day of the forum finally arrived, and the auditorium, this time, was overflowing. I looked around and couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride. The committee's effort, the collaboration, the sense of purpose, it all culminated there. As the speakers took the stage, each shared their experiences and challenges. It was a true panel of courage and triumph. One of them, the CEO of a technology company, addressed us sincerely. When I became a mother, many said I wouldn't be able to lead anymore. Today, I can say that my role as a mother not only empowered my skills, but also generated great solutions for my company. Motherhood taught me to be a more empathetic leader. Her words resonated throughout the auditorium, showing everyone that motherhood could be celebrated, not feared. The atmosphere was electrically charged. There were smiles, laughter, and tears of emotion. At the end of the presentations, we created a space for questions and discussions. What followed was an intense debate on the meaningful implementation of motherhood in the workplace. The connection between the participants was palpable, and many felt comfortable sharing their own struggles. With the growing popularity of the event and the topic of inclusion, the reception inside and outside the company began to shape into something grand. At the end of the day, we were stunned but energized. The impact on social media was overwhelming, with thousands of shares and comments talking about the importance of giving a voice to women, echoing the strength of those who live this reality daily. I was frequently tagged in the posts. We weren't just changing the corporate landscape, we were inspiring a movement. However, not everything received applause. When the event was covered by the largest local news network, there was a negative reaction from some members of the conservative board. In subsequent meetings, some still argued that this focus on motherhood could distract the workforce and compromise results. One of them, the same man who once uttered words that cut me to the quick, now engaged in criticism based on his ingrained prejudices. It was painful to hear derogatory comments about something that was solidifying as a powerful movement. In response, I decided to form a group focused on researching how other companies had implemented inclusion and diversity. The research showed that corporations that invested in motherhood had a higher return on investment. It wasn't just words, but concrete data that could be presented. With the data in hand, I prepared a new presentation for the board, a panel designed to present a solid case advocating for motherhood as a long-term investment. I invited Laura to be present. This would only reinforce the idea that mutual support was essential. In the presentation, nervousness mixed with a growing confidence took over. Looking at the faces of the board, I saw not only myself, but also all the women who fought every day to make their voices heard. We are making history. By implementing inclusion, we are giving tools to the next generation of women. Focusing only on short-term efficiency limits our ability to innovate and grow. Our strength lies in diversity. The silence after the presentation was intense. One of the directors, the most skeptical of all, unleashed a barrage of questions. What about performance? Calmly, I explained that research showed that inclusive environments have higher levels of engagement and productivity. The numbers don't lie, I concluded. And then, one by one, the previously skeptical faces began to change. Mark, in a sincere tone, made a proposal. Let's do a test. We can implement a pilot program based on what you've proposed and see how it affects team performance. What had begun as a tense debate turned into a new possibility. The path was open for a transformative future. In the following days, the movement we started was buzzing. The application of these practices resulted in the creation of an unprecedented support space, where women felt comfortable expressing their concerns and experiences. Resistance had somehow dissolved, giving way to solidarity. The feedback, although some remained skeptical, showed a growing interest in inclusive practices. The result was visible. Women who had previously hesitated to speak now felt heard. Employees who had felt isolated began to emerge and share their stories, echoing a continuous circle of mutual support. A culture of learning began to develop. Many of the men in the company also started to communicate. They wanted to understand how they could support their colleagues and be part of this transformation. Conversations became more roundtable and collaborative. At the end of a month, I looked around the room and saw not only a diversity of voices, but a true unity that was beginning to strengthen. With the collective vision, motherhood became a topic not only respected, but revered within the company. Together, we formed an environment where everyone belonged, where every story and experience laden with struggle was considered important. What began as a movement focused on motherhood came to embrace broader issues of inclusion and diversity, expanding the corporate vision to new frontiers. In that moment of transformation, I saw that our battle was only beginning, but that, for the first time, the path to an inclusive future was truly opening up. I, Clara, a project manager, was not only fighting for a space to be heard, but was on the path to building a legacy that teaches everyone, men and women, that motherhood is a connective force and not a barrier. We built bridges, not walls, and the real battle wasn't about being a mother, but about living motherhood as a strength that allowed us to redefine how we could work together towards a tomorrow where respect and inclusion would be the norm, not the exception. And so, with each step, the voices became stronger, and with them, the movement for the many who still face challenges on their path. We were about to change the way corporate motherhood is viewed, not by a number, but by each life story that joined ours, celebrating the legacy we knew we could leave. The battle for a transformative future was alive, and with it, the belief that this future would be a reality. Months passed, and the transformation within the company was palpable. The maternity committee became a model of inclusion and diversity, serving as a reference for other companies in the industry. The motherhood and career forum we organized was just the beginning, but now we were reaping the rewards. Looking back, the challenges we faced became valuable lessons, a solid foundation for a future of significant change. I was no longer just a project manager. I had become an advocate. My role now included not only managing teams and projects, but also actively shaping the organizational culture. The idea that motherhood could be a unifying point of strength was deeply rooted in daily conversations. I heard colleagues speak proudly about the initiatives that supported mothers, and the tone of the work environment shifted from a space focused on productivity to one where everyone's well-being was prioritized. At home, the transformation was also reflected. I often found a husband who now better understood the struggles that moms like me faced. The long conversations about the implications of work-life balance also changed the dynamics of our relationship. He began to engage in the dynamics of fatherhood more actively, supporting me not only at home, but also celebrating the victories we achieved at work. Motherhood had become a shared journey, and I couldn't have felt more grateful. One day, upon arriving at the office, I saw a new task on my desk: a proposal for Laura and me to present to senior management an assessment of the impact the new inclusion policies had on employee productivity and satisfaction. I felt a surge of emotion realizing that our work hadn't gone unnoticed. Recognition was coming in the form of new responsibilities, and I was ready to face them head-on. "Laura, we need to be very transparent about what worked and what we still need to improve," I said to her as we organized the data. Mutual support brought a new layer to our relationship. Over the past few weeks, the rivalry that had previously prevailed had become a fruitful partnership. With each meeting, we became more confident that we were allies fighting for the same ideal. The presentation to management took place a few weeks later, and confidence was high. Together, we shared data that showed a remarkable increase in employee satisfaction and team productivity among those who implemented the new policies. The atmosphere in the room became thick with anticipation. The feedback was clear. Each of the directors seemed more open to our proposal to expand inclusive initiatives. Mark, always an advocate for change, posed a critical question. What's the next step to ensure this transformation is sustained long-term? This wasn't a new question for us. It was one we were ready to answer. We need to create a program of ongoing support, not just to measure effectiveness, but also to continuously listen to women's experiences in the workplace. Continuous training and feedback will always be fundamental. That's how we truly build an inclusive culture, I proposed. A murmur of agreement rippled around me. The support now came not only from Mark, but from other directors who had previously been more hesitant. At the end of the session, we were congratulated and encouraged to move forward. This isn't just a one-off proposal, it's a commitment. I'm truly proud of what you're doing, Mark said. A wave of emotion washed over me as I heard his words. It was a level of recognition I never imagined receiving. In the months that followed, new initiatives began to be implemented in other divisions of the company. Motherhood was no longer a burden, but part of the success and innovation narrative we were building. A mentorship program expanded to include expectant fathers, promoting a comprehensive awareness that fatherhood and motherhood could coexist harmoniously and productively. And then, as we celebrated these successes, a sharp thought pierced me. I found myself reflecting on my own experience and how it all started with a moment of betrayal. The fight for mothers in the workplace was now embedded in the company culture, and what could have brought me down proved to be a catalyst for a broader shift. Reflecting on it all, I realized that each story told, each struggle faced, was a new layer in the tapestry we were creating together. We were shaping a new future for all the women and men in our company, a future where vulnerability became strength. No obstacle would be too great when we joined forces to overcome them together. That night, arriving home, I found my husband waiting with dinner prepared. Looking into his eyes, I saw the pride he had for me and for all that we were accomplishing. I felt that this journey wasn't just about a workplace. It was about creating a new narrative for family life. It was the beginning of a new chapter. With a smile on my face, I looked at him and said, "We're only just beginning, but together, we'll change the world." My heart beat strong. The journey I had fought for was manifesting not just in the workplace, but also in my personal life, becoming a celebration of motherhood, fatherhood, and the rich tapestry of experiences we all carry. And so, no matter how long the journey, I was ready to face it, armed with courage and an indomitable spirit of solidarity. There was power in our unity, and as we celebrated our collective victories, the future looked brighter than ever. The battle for inclusion had brought us together, and we were all ready to face whatever came next, head on, mothers and fathers, alongside every member of our team. This fight was ours, and together, we would go far.